The stars above Earth gleamed like cold, indifferent eyes, watching over a planet that had once been small and unnoticed in the grand expanse of the universe. Yet now, Earth stood at the edge of something monumental. The Empire, a vast, ruthless power that had stretched across the galaxy, had made a mistake. They had underestimated Earth. They had pushed too far. In a dark, secretive room deep within the heart of Earth's government, a group of people gathered. They were not the usual politicians or generals. These were the hidden leaders, the ones who had seen the Empire's growing influence and had known for years that Earth's silence could not last forever. They knew the galaxy had been watching, waiting to see what would happen when Earth finally decided to fight back. At the head of the table sat General Selene, the leader of Earth's defense forces. She was a woman of few words, known for her sharp mind and fierce determination. Her face was set in a hard line, but her eyes were filled with something more. Fear, but not for herself. Fear for her planet, for her people, and for the future. "Time is running out," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "We've been silent for too long. The Empire has already crossed too many lines. Now they believe they can do anything to us without consequences." Her advisor, Commander Drake, nodded. His hands were clasped in front of him, his expression unreadable. "They've been taking our resources, controlling our communications, and suppressing our advancements. And they think we won't fight back because we don't have their technology, their fleets. They think we are weak." Selene's fists tightened. "They're wrong." The room fell silent for a moment. It was a silence heavy with the weight of what was to come. They all knew the Empire's true power. They had vast fleets, planets at their command, and weapons beyond anything Earth had ever dreamed of. They were an empire that crushed opposition with ease. But what they didn't understand, what they hadn't yet realized, was that Earth wasn't just another colony. It wasn't just another piece of the galaxy to be controlled. Earth was different. Selene looked around the table, her gaze locking with each of her advisors. "The Empire thinks they've won. They think we've given up. But they're wrong. The Empire is about to learn that there's something more powerful than their weapons. There's something they can't stop. And that's the will of Earth." Drake raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering across his face. "And what do you propose we do?" "We can't match them in strength, General. We don't have their resources, their ships." Selene stood up slowly, her posture straight and resolute. "We don't need to match them. We need to remind them who we are. We need to show them that we will not be crushed." She walked over to a large console, her fingers brushing across a sleek surface. A hologram of the galaxy appeared, with Earth at its core. The Empire's fleet was a looming threat just beyond the solar system, but Earth's defenses were barely a flicker in comparison. She pressed a button, and a new image appeared. An encrypted transmission, its contents visible only to those present in the room. It was a simple message, but its weight was undeniable. A warning. "You've crossed the line." The message was sent to the Empire, a message that carried with it the weight of humanity's final ultimatum. It wasn't just a message, it was a declaration. Earth was done waiting. Selene's voice was calm as she spoke again, but there was a fierceness in her tone that sent a ripple through the room. "This message is only the beginning. The Empire will not respond kindly to our warning. They will think it's a threat they can ignore. But this is no idle threat. This is a promise. We will not be silent anymore." As the message was transmitted, the tension in the room grew. They were no longer just sending a message to the Empire. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was here to stay. And the Empire, for all its might, had just made its first mistake. The response from the Empire would not be immediate. In fact, it might take days, or even weeks, for the message to reach the Empire's highest command. But when it did, it would shake them to their core. They would know that Earth had decided it was no longer a helpless planet under the Empire's thumb. Back on Earth, people lived in relative peace, unaware of the tension building between their planet and the stars. Most Earthlings had no idea that their leaders had just set the stage for something much larger than they could imagine. A storm was coming, but the people of Earth didn't yet see the clouds gathering on the horizon. In the Empire's grand citadel, Emperor Tiburon sat upon his throne, surrounded by his most trusted generals. He received countless reports of uprisings and resistance from planets under his rule, but he had never once considered Earth a serious threat. "The humans still resist," Tiburon's advisor said, bowing low. "But they are nothing compared to the power of the Empire." Emperor Tiburon's lips curled into a smile. Let them have their small rebellions. They will learn their place soon enough. But what Tiburon didn't realize was that the humans had already learned their place. They had spent years silently gathering strength, building their technologies, and waiting for the right moment to strike back. And that moment had arrived. The message from Earth had been sent, but its true impact wouldn't be felt for some time. However, when the Empire received it, they would have no choice but to acknowledge that Earth had crossed a line of its own, and there was no turning back. As Earth's leaders prepared for what was to come, they knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. And the Empire would learn that they had made a grave mistake in thinking Earth could ever be silenced. The first spark of rebellion had been lit, and it would soon ignite into a blaze that would change the fate of the entire universe. The message from Earth had been sent, but the Empire, as expected, paid little attention to it. Across the galaxy, the Empire's vast fleet continued its march, expanding their control with ruthless efficiency. Their commanders were secure in their belief that nothing could stand in their way. They ruled over hundreds of worlds and had crushed countless rebellions before. So what could this tiny, insignificant planet called Earth do to stop them? Back in the Empire's capital, Emperor Tiburon sat upon his throne, a powerful symbol of the Empire's might. His advisors had gathered around him, presenting report after report of Earth's supposed threats. Yet none of them stirred any concern. The Emperor's mood was one of indifference, as if nothing could ever challenge his reign. One of his top generals, General Varus, leaned forward, his voice deep and authoritative. "Sire, we've received an encrypted transmission from Earth. They've issued a warning. It's nothing but a message, a meaningless threat. We shouldn't even waste time addressing it." Tiburon glanced at the transmission, which had been projected in front of him like a floating hologram. The message, though short, was bold and direct. "You've crossed the line." The Emperor let out a soft chuckle, the sound echoing through the silent chamber. "A warning from a small, insignificant planet," he muttered. "What are they truly capable of? Do they think we will tremble because of their childish threats?" He turned to his other advisors, each of whom looked at one another with nervous glances. "No, sire," one of them spoke. "The humans have no chance against us. We've crushed rebellions before. Their technology is far behind ours, and their forces are too weak to challenge our might. We can handle them with ease." Tiburon's smile widened. "Exactly. Earth is no different from all the other worlds that have tried to resist us. They'll soon realize the futility of their defiance." The Emperor waved his hand dismissively, signaling the end of the conversation. "Continue with our plans. Their message is nothing but empty words. We shall ignore it and proceed." But there was one person who didn't share this blind confidence. Admiral Bracius, a seasoned leader in the Empire's fleet, had seen enough wars to know when something felt off. He had always been wary of underestimating an enemy. And the humans, despite their apparent weakness, seemed different. Their message, simple though it was, felt oddly personal. "Your Majesty," Admiral Bracius spoke, his voice low yet firm, "I recommend that we don't ignore Earth entirely. They may be more capable than we think. Perhaps we should send a smaller fleet to observe their activities and see if there's more to their warning." The room grew quiet as the Emperor looked at Bracius with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. "You're suggesting we waste resources on a planet like Earth?" Tiburon asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. "They are nothing. Let them squawk. Their attempt at intimidation is laughable. Our fleet is far superior, and no one dares stand against us. But Bracius stood firm. With all due respect, Your Majesty, we've underestimated enemies before. Earth may have something we don't understand yet, something we haven't seen. Tiburon, growing irritated with the Admiral's doubts, leaned forward, his gaze cold. I don't want excuses, Bracius. I want results. We will proceed with our expansion plans, and when the time comes, we will crush Earth just like we've crushed every other planet that dared defy us. Admiral Bracius, knowing that further resistance would only lead to his own downfall, fell silent. Deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. But in the face of the Emperor's authority, there was little he could do. As the Empire moved forward with its plans, the fleet continued its relentless advance, prepared to overwhelm any forces that stood in its way. The Emperor had made it clear, Earth was nothing more than a footnote in the Empire's grand design. Their message would be forgotten, and soon, Earth would fall in line. Yet far beyond the reach of the Empire's vast fleets, Earth was already preparing for what lay ahead. It wasn't just the leaders and military commanders who were ready. The people of Earth, the common citizens, were waking up to a new reality. The world was no longer passive, no longer willing to stand by as the Empire extended its reach across the galaxy. Something had shifted. General Selene and her inner circle were quietly building up Earth's defenses, gathering whatever resources they could to stand against the coming storm. They knew they could never match the Empire's size or firepower, but they had something the Empire didn't: determination. Earth's resistance wasn't just about weapons or ships. It was about the spirit of humanity itself, the will to fight for their freedom, for their survival. Despite the growing pressure and the uncertain future, the people of Earth were determined to show the galaxy that their warnings were not empty. In the quiet corridors of Earth's underground military facilities, soldiers worked tirelessly, training in new technologies they could barely understand but knew they needed. Weapons, some newly developed and others scavenged from the depths of the universe, were being assembled, ready for when the time came to stand against the Empire's might. Meanwhile, the Empire continued with its expansion plans, unaware of the storm that was brewing on Earth. The galaxy remained unaware of the revolution that was about to unfold, one that would shake the very foundations of the Empire's rule. The first cracks had appeared. The Empire, overconfident and blind to the threat growing beneath them, would soon face a challenge they had never anticipated. Earth's message had been sent, and although it seemed to have been ignored, its true impact was only beginning to unfold. And when the Empire finally realized their mistake, it would be too late. The line that they had crossed was far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The Empire's fleets continued to expand, its ships silently cutting through the stars, as though nothing could stand in their way. The Emperor's arrogance was unmatched, and for the time being, it seemed Earth's warning had been dismissed as nothing more than a fluke. To the Empire, Earth was an insignificant planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. But that was about to change. On Earth, the preparations had been ongoing, quiet and unnoticed by the outside world. General Selene, along with her most trusted advisors, had been working tirelessly in secret. The warning sent to the Empire had not been an empty gesture. Earth's leaders knew that retaliation would be swift, but they also knew that their survival depended on making the first move, striking before the Empire could crush them entirely. It wasn't just about defending Earth. It was about sending a clear message to the Empire. A message that this tiny, seemingly insignificant planet was not as weak as they believed. Earth would not roll over. It would fight. General Selene stood before a large holographic display, her eyes scanning the war plans she had put in motion. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the glowing projections of Earth's military might. Her mind raced, but her expression remained calm, focused. She knew the consequences of failure, and yet she could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on her shoulders. This was the moment when Earth would make its stand. "Are we ready?" she asked, her voice steady. "Yes, General," Commander Drake replied. "Our strike force is in position. All systems are online. We have the element of surprise on our side." Celine nodded. She had no illusions about the difficulty of what lay ahead. Earth's fleet was still small compared to the might of the Empire, and their forces were vastly outnumbered. But they had something the Empire did not expect: new technology. In secret, Earth had been working on weapons that the Empire could not even fathom. Weapons that were far beyond anything they had ever seen, crafted not from traditional technology, but from something more primitive, more human: cunning, resourcefulness, and willpower. One weapon, in particular, was ready: the hypernova cannon, a newly developed piece of technology that could disrupt and disable entire fleets with a single blast. It was still untested, but General Celine had placed her faith in it. It was their best shot at crippling the Empire's advance. As Celine gave the command to initiate the first strike, the tension in the room was almost palpable. Earth's forces moved into position, and the first strike would not be a loud or obvious one. It would be subtle, a precision strike designed to cripple the Empire's command ships in their most vulnerable moments. In the vast reaches of space, far from Earth, the Empire's fleet sailed steadily toward its next target. Admiral Brightest, still not fully convinced that Earth could be so easily dismissed, had been closely monitoring any activity near their borders. But nothing had raised any alarms. It seemed like Earth was just like any other conquered world, silent and defeated. However, as the Empire's fleet advanced, they didn't notice the invisible threat approaching them. A small, seemingly insignificant vessel, Earth's newly crafted warship, slipped through the void of space, its engines powered by a technology the Empire had never encountered. It was a ship built for one purpose: to deliver the first strike. The hypernova cannon, mounted on the warship, fired a single concentrated pulse of energy, a brilliant blue beam that sliced through the fabric of space itself. It hit its target, one of the Empire's command ships, a colossal vessel that was vital to their operations in this region. The ship, unprepared for such a strike, buckled under the pressure of the attack. Its shields flickered and failed. The ship's hull buckled inward, sending waves of energy coursing through its systems. Within moments, it was a burning wreck, drifting in space. The impact was immediate. The rest of the fleet, unprepared for such an assault, was thrown into chaos. Their communication systems were disrupted, and many of their ships lost power. The Empire's vaunted superiority was exposed for the first time. The warship's attack had been quick, efficient, and devastating. General Celine watched from Earth as her strike force pulled back to a safe distance. They had succeeded. Earth's first strike had been a success. The Empire had been blindsided, and their precious command ship was now nothing more than space debris. But the victory was not without cost. Celine knew that the Empire would retaliate. They would come back with more strength than ever before. Earth had just sent a message, but the Empire would be forced to respond. They would not let this attack go unpunished. "What's the damage?" Celine asked, her voice calm, but her eyes filled with anticipation. Commander Drake quickly analyzed the data. "We've crippled their command ship, General, but they've already begun to regroup. A larger force is on its way." Celine's face hardened. "We need to keep them on the defensive. We can't give them time to recover." As the Empire's fleet regrouped and began to power up its weapons, a new sense of urgency began to spread across Earth's military forces. They had won a small victory, but it was far from over. The Empire was not one to back down easily. Meanwhile, in the Empire's command center, Admiral Brightest stood before the projection of the destroyed command ship. His face was grim, his hand clenched into a fist. "This was no ordinary attack," he muttered to himself. "They're not what we thought they were. Earth has done something we didn't believe possible. This is just the beginning." Back on Earth, General Celine gathered her forces. There was no turning back now. She had sent the first strike. Earth had sent a message. And now, the war for humanity's future had truly begun. The initial success of Earth's surprise strike against the Empire's command ship was a victory, but it had come with a price. The message had been sent, loud and clear, but the Empire was not one to be underestimated. The initial shock was wearing off, and now the response was inevitable. Earth's actions had not gone unnoticed, and the galaxy's most powerful empire was about to exact its revenge. Admiral Bratius, having reviewed the damage, was not one to panic. His calculated mind recognized the depth of the threat now posed by Earth, but he was confident the Empire could easily handle it. The Empire was vast, its military supremacy unmatched. Earth had been an insignificant world, and he believed that they were nothing more than a nuisance now. He was wrong. As the Empire gathered its forces, a massive fleet set its course toward Earth. A few command ships had been lost, but the Empire was prepared to crush this rebellion swiftly. The fleet was composed of warships, battle cruisers, and dreadnoughts, each more powerful than the last, prepared to bring an end to the threat once and for all. Back on Earth, General Selene watched from the command center as the data on her screens confirmed her worst fears. A much larger fleet was advancing, and it was heading directly for Earth. The message that Earth had sent to the Empire had ignited a firestorm, and now they would pay the price. It was only a matter of time before the Empire retaliated with full force. "We have no time to waste," Selene said, her voice tight with determination. "Prepare the defense systems. Our window of opportunity is closing." Earth's military was already at full alert, but Selene knew that their forces were still vastly outmatched by the Empire's overwhelming power. Despite their technological advancements and new weapons, Earth was still a tiny planet facing an unstoppable juggernaut. The once hidden underground bases, now fully operational, had been equipped with weapons designed to exploit the Empire's weaknesses. But Selene's concerns ran deeper. Would Earth's newfound technology be enough? And more importantly, would the people of Earth rally together in time to survive? In the Empire's command ship, Emperor Tiburon looked over the reports of the destruction. The loss of a command ship had angered him, but what irritated him the most was that it came from Earth, a world he had believed to be nothing more than a backwater planet. But this was no longer just about the ships or the technology. It was about defiance. A planet that had dared to challenge the Empire had now become a target. "They will learn to bow before us," Tiburon muttered to his generals, his voice cold and commanding. "Crush their defenses. Wipe them off the map." Admiral Bratius, standing at his side, couldn't help but feel a growing unease. Something about this felt personal. The humans of Earth had shown a resilience that he had not anticipated, and it troubled him. Despite the Empire's vast power, Earth was no longer just an insignificant blip on the radar. It had become a symbol of something more. The battle begins. As the Empire's fleet neared Earth, the atmosphere on the planet grew tense. The initial strike had rattled the Empire, but now Earth faced the true power of their enemy. The enemy's ships loomed over the planet like an approaching storm, their weapons primed and ready for the final assault. Yet Earth's forces stood firm. General Selene, together with her commanders, had prepared their final defenses. The hypernova cannon, the weapon that had delivered the first blow, was now aimed at the approaching fleet, ready to strike again. But Selene knew it wasn't enough. They needed more. "We don't have the numbers to fight them head-on," Commander Drake said, his voice laced with concern. "We can't match their fleet." Selene nodded, her expression resolute. "We don't need to. We need to outsmart them. We have to buy time for Earth to prepare its last defenses. The longer we hold them off, the more we can build, the stronger we'll become." The warships that Earth had deployed formed a tight defensive ring around the planet, preparing to engage the Empire's superior fleet in a battle that would be their last stand. Earth's ships, still relatively small compared to the Empire's juggernauts, readied their weapons. Each ship carried the hopes of the entire human race, an army standing in defiance against an empire that had crushed worlds before. Suddenly, a bright flash lit up the sky. The hypernova cannon fired once more, sending another devastating beam of energy into the approaching fleet. The blast hit one of the Empire's dreadnoughts, and for a moment, the ship appeared to tremble, the light from the explosion visible from the surface of Earth itself. It was enough to shake the Empire, just for an instant. But it wasn't enough to stop them. The Empire retaliated immediately. Massive waves of energy slammed into Earth's ships, sending them reeling. The space around the planet became a chaotic battleground. Weapons clashed, shields flickered, and explosions filled the air. It was a desperate fight, one that would determine the fate of humanity. Back on Earth, people across the planet held their breath as they watched the battle unfold. The Empire's ships were overwhelming, but the humans fought with everything they had. The civilians, the soldiers, the leaders, they all knew that the survival of their species hung in the balance. General Celine, standing at the command center, watched as Earth's fleet continued to hold the line. Every moment, every second counted. The Empire's forces were relentless, but they hadn't expected this kind of resistance from Earth. "Hold your ground." Celine barked into her communicator. "We will not fall. Not today." Her voice echoed through the speakers, giving strength to her people. Earth had proven something that the Empire had long forgotten, that even the smallest of planets, when pushed to its limits, could be a force to be reckoned with. They would not surrender. Earth was not a world to be erased. The battle had raged for hours, but to General Celine, it felt like an eternity. Earth's defenses had held strong, but it was becoming clear that the Empire's forces were relentless, their firepower almost insurmountable. The very weight of their superiority pressed against Earth's forces, who fought valiantly, but found themselves slowly being pushed back. Admiral Bracius had seen enough. The Empire's fleet was systematically dismantling Earth's defenses, one ship at a time. While their warships were designed to endure, the sheer number and firepower of the Empire's fleet meant Earth could only last for so long. The hypernova cannon, Earth's trump card, had fired several times, but the damage it caused was limited. It could not stop the onslaught from the Empire's vast armada. Earth's military was on the verge of collapse, but there was still hope, just one last chance. Deep within Earth's underground war bunkers, Dr. Mara Winters, one of Earth's top scientists, paced anxiously in front of a terminal. Her hands hovered over the control panel, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was on the verge of finishing something that could change the tide of the war, if only they had the time. "General, we're almost ready," Dr. Winters said, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "The new weapon is online. It's untested, but it could be our only shot at winning." Celine nodded, the weight of the situation heavy on her shoulders. Earth's forces were dwindling, but she knew that Dr. Winters' creation could be their salvation. "What is it?" Celine asked, her voice tight with urgency. Dr. Winters took a deep breath. "It's a graviton bomb. We've developed it in secret. If we launch it, it will collapse the gravitational field around the Empire's fleet. They'll be crushed under their own weight. But it's risky. The technology is untested, and it could destroy everything." Celine's mind raced. The idea of using such a powerful weapon was terrifying. Earth's last hope lay in a bomb that could potentially level the entire battlefield, and possibly Earth itself. "We don't have a choice," Celine said finally. "Make it happen." The countdown. Back on the battlefield, the Empire's fleet was closing in. Earth's remaining warships were barely holding their ground. Their weapons were ineffective against the Empire's overwhelming power, and a hypernova cannon could no longer make a difference. Celine knew that Earth was fighting a losing battle, but in the darkest moment, a new light appeared. The graviton bomb was activated. Deep beneath Earth's surface, a hidden launch silo opened, and the bomb, glowing with an eerie energy, was loaded onto a specialized rocket. As the countdown began, Earth's military forces held their breath. The entire fate of humanity rested on this single weapon. In space, the Empire's fleet drew closer. The command ship of Admiral Bracius hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere, observing the destruction below. He couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Earth had put up a good fight, but it was clear that the Empire would win. He was just about to give the order to wipe out the last resistance when a sudden burst of energy from Earth's atmosphere caught his attention. "Admiral, look at this," one of the officers called out, pointing at the screens. A bright, shimmering light appeared near Earth. It was too bright to be anything normal. The officer's voice trembled as he added, "It's a missile." Bracius turned to his officers. "Launch the countermeasures. Now." But it was too late. Earth had launched the graviton bomb, and there was no time to stop it. The destruction. The graviton bomb tore through space, its trail a brilliant streak of light. The missile was heading straight for the Empire's fleet. As it neared its target, a deep hum filled the air, followed by an intense vibration that rattled everything aboard Earth's ships. The moment the bomb collided with the Empire's forces, something unimaginable happened. Space itself seemed to bend. The gravitational field around the Empire's ships collapsed, and with it, the very fabric of the fleet's formation was shattered. The Empire's massive dreadnoughts and battle cruisers, ships that had once seemed invincible, were caught in a violent gravitational pull. Their hulls groaned under the strain, and one by one, the ships were crushed. Some ships were torn apart completely, while others simply collapsed under the pressure, crumbling in on themselves like empty cans. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The Empire's fleet, the force that had once seemed so powerful and unstoppable, was now a mass of twisted, burning wreckage. In the distance, Earth's warships watched in disbelief as the unthinkable unfolded before their eyes. The aftermath. The graviton bomb's effects were far-reaching. Earth's ships, though shaken by the explosion, remained intact, and the remaining Empire forces had been completely neutralized. Earth's defense had been successful, but the cost was high. The explosion had caused significant damage to Earth's atmosphere, and parts of the planet's surface had been scorched. It wasn't a victory without consequence, but it was a victory nonetheless. On Earth, the people watched the sky, waiting for the news. The final wave of Empire forces had been destroyed, and with it, the threat of annihilation. But it was clear that the battle had left scars that would take generations to heal. General Selene stood silently in the command center, her face solemn. The graviton bomb had saved humanity, but at a great cost. She had led her people to victory, but she knew that their survival would come at a price far beyond what they had ever anticipated. And as the dust settled, there was a strange sense of peace that settled over Earth. The Empire had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Earth had made its stand, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the wake of the devastating graviton bomb, the remnants of the Empire's once dominant fleet floated in space like broken husks of the unstoppable force they had once been. The destruction had been swift, precise, and utterly irreversible. Humanity had done the impossible. Earth had shown the galaxy just how far it would go to protect itself, and the repercussions of that victory were still unfolding. But while Earth celebrated, a darker storm was brewing. In the Empire's capital, Tiburon's palace, the Emperor's eyes were burning with fury. He paced back and forth in his throne room, glaring at the reports of his fleet's destruction. The Empire had never suffered such a catastrophic blow. Admiral Bracius, the commanding officer of the Empire's forces in the sector, was dead, along with countless others, swallowed by the very gravity they had taken for granted. The loss was not just military. It was a symbol of the Empire's fragility. No matter how powerful the Empire had once been, it had underestimated Earth. The report had been clear. Earth had launched a weapon so powerful that it could bend space itself. The graviton bomb had crushed the fleet in seconds, a weapon unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. And while the debris of their fleet drifted in the cold expanse of space, Tiburon's thoughts were clouded with rage. How could this have happened? Emperor Tiburon growled, his voice thick with anger. His generals remained silent, each one afraid to speak, knowing the consequences of failure in the empire were always dire. Finally, General Vorex, one of Tiburon's most loyal commanders, spoke up. "Emperor, the loss of the fleet is devastating, but Earth's strength is their weakness. They are not prepared for what is coming next." Tiburon turned his gaze on Vorex, his eyes burning with a quiet intensity. "What do you mean?" The general's voice was steady, but there was a hint of unease. Their victory was a fluke, a desperate gamble. Earth's weapon is powerful, but they cannot repeat this again. Their technology is still too young. Without the Empire's resources, they cannot sustain their defense. Tiburon nodded slowly, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Then we shall give them a taste of what true power looks like." A new threat. Back on Earth, life had returned to a fragile semblance of normality. The skies, still blackened from the aftermath of the graviton bomb, slowly began to clear. Earth had won, but the cost was high. The infrastructure of many cities had been destroyed, and the planet's climate was still unstable from the shockwave that had rocked the planet. But there was something else that gnawed at the edge of humanity's victory. The Empire wasn't finished yet. General Selene stood at the command center, reviewing intelligence reports from around the globe. Despite the destruction, there had been no immediate retaliation from the Empire. For a time, Earth had held its breath, wondering whether the Empire would regroup and strike again. The answer came sooner than they expected. Across the system, at the edge of the galaxy, a new fleet appeared. Unlike the last, it was far larger, more menacing. Squadrons upon squadrons of black warships, their engines burning with cold precision. The Empire had rebuilt. The message was simple. The Empire was back. And this time, they were bringing everything. Selene's heart sank as the transmission appeared on her screen, one she never wanted to see again. The insignia of the Empire. The fleet, brimming with imperial power, was advancing toward Earth once more. And this time there would be no warning, no time to prepare. Earth had defeated one fleet, but the Empire was an empire for a reason. "This isn't over," Selene whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're coming back stronger." The decision. As Earth braced for the next attack, the leaders of the planet gathered to discuss the one option that could prevent annihilation. There was no other choice but to strike first, before the Empire's new fleet could reach Earth. The problem was Earth's forces, while impressive, were still outgunned by the Empire's sheer numbers and resources. The balance of power had tilted, but only slightly. Dr. Winters, the scientist who had helped develop the graviton bomb, stood alongside Selene in the war room. The atmosphere was thick with tension. "General," she said, "our technology is advancing, but we don't have anything that compares to the Empire's new fleet. The weapons we've developed can hurt them, but we can't stop them without help." Selene looked at the map, watching the Empire's fleet grow larger as it moved toward Earth. "We have to act now. If we wait, we'll be wiped out before we even have a chance." "You're right," Winters agreed, but her voice faltered slightly. "But the only way we stand a chance is if we deploy something much larger. Something we've been working on in secret. The phase rift cannon could be the key. But it's not finished." Selene's eyes narrowed. "How long until it's ready?" Dr. Winters hesitated. "If we push everything we have into it, a few days. But it's dangerous, General. If the rift is too unstable, it could rip apart more than just the enemy fleet." Selene's mind raced. The phase rift cannon was their best shot at survival, but the risk was monumental. A single misstep could cost Earth everything. Yet, if they didn't try, the Empire's fleet would destroy them before they even had a chance to fight back. "I'll give the order," Selene said, her voice cold with resolve. "Prepare the phase rift cannon. It's our last hope." The final countdown. The Earth had prepared itself for a war it had never imagined. Now it was up to its scientists, engineers, and soldiers to unite and deploy a weapon that could save them from utter destruction. But the countdown had begun, and there was no going back. The Empire was coming. And this time, Earth would have to make its stand against the might of an empire determined to prove that no force, no matter how small or insignificant, could challenge it. The battle would be fought in the cold emptiness of space, but the outcome would decide the future of Earth and of the galaxy itself. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its climax. The last few days had been nothing but preparation, humans pulling together in the face of annihilation. With the phase rift cannon finally complete, General Celine and Dr. Winters watched as their final hope was carefully positioned on the outskirts of Earth's atmosphere, ready to unleash the most dangerous weapon they had ever created. Deep within the war room, Celine stood staring at the holographic map of Earth's defenses, the tension palpable in the air. The Empire's fleet, now massive and ominous, was only hours away from entering Earth's orbit. Their ships were huge, more numerous than ever, and their weapons seemed endless. "We don't have much time," Celine said grimly, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of knowing how much was riding on this. Her hands rested on the edge of the table, white-knuckled, and trembling slightly from the tension. "Once they arrive, it will be too late." Dr. Winters stood next to her, tapping her fingers nervously against the terminal. "The phase rift cannon is powered up, but I've run every simulation possible. There's a chance, just a chance, that it could work, but it's never been tested on this scale before." "Do we have any other choice?" Celine asked, turning to face her. "If this fails, Earth is gone. We have to make it work." The Empire's approach. In space, Admiral Vorex, commander of the Empire's fleet, stood aboard his flagship, a towering vessel that dwarfed Earth's defenses. His gaze was fixed on the blue planet below, a planet that had dared to stand against the might of the Empire and survive. But now, the rebellion was over. The Empire's forces were too great, too powerful for any planet to resist for long. "Prepare to enter orbit," Vorex ordered, his voice cold and calculating. "Destroy Earth's remaining defenses. The humans have no more weapons that can harm us." Behind him, his officers nodded, but there was a hint of uncertainty in their eyes. The battle had been long and brutal, and the remnants of Earth's defenses had fought with an intensity that seemed almost unnatural. Still, the Empire's superior firepower would crush them. Of that Vorex was sure. The weapon unleashed. Back on Earth, the phase rift cannon stood poised on its launch pad, a colossal structure with a power that defied comprehension. The weapon had been designed to tear through the fabric of space itself, creating a rift powerful enough to shift the balance of power in the galaxy. As the countdown began, Celine and Winters stood side by side in the command center. "We can't afford any mistakes," Winters muttered, her eyes glued to the screens. The moment arrived. The final countdown reached 0. "Fire the cannon," Celine commanded. A deep rumbling sound filled the air as the phase rift cannon powered up. The entire structure hummed with a strange energy as it prepared to fire its lethal payload into space. The Earth's last hope was about to be unleashed. The rift opens. In the cold emptiness of space, the Empire's fleet continued its advance, unaware of the devastation that awaited them. Then, a brilliant flash of light appeared, rippling across space as though reality itself was being torn apart. The phase rift cannon fired. The beam shot through the atmosphere, sending shockwaves across the planet's surface. The energy radiated outward, splitting the fabric of space itself as it traveled toward the Empire's fleet. Time seemed to slow, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the rift opened. The fabric of space around the Empire's ships distorted, swirling like a whirlpool. The ships closest to the rift were pulled toward it, their hulls bending and groaning as the gravitational forces tore them apart. They were helpless in the face of the rift, their massive engines no match for the distorted pull of the void. It wasn't just the ships. Space itself began to warp, causing chaos within the Empire's fleet. Admiral Vorex's flagship, the dreadnought Obsidian, was the first to fall victim. The once mighty ship was dragged into the rift, its towering structure bending and collapsing like paper under pressure. The fleet around it followed, their ships pulled into the rift with terrifying speed. The entire Imperial force was consumed by the rift, and in an instant, their power was no more. The rift pulsated one final time before collapsing in on itself, leaving only the void of space behind. Victory and loss. On Earth, the world held its breath as the news came in. The Empire was gone. Every ship, every fleet, every soldier was lost to the rift. There was no escaping it. The phase rift cannon had done its job. Earth had won. But the victory was bittersweet. Though Earth had survived, the planet had paid a heavy price. The phase rift cannon had used nearly every ounce of energy left on Earth, and the planet was now fragile. The blast had destabilized the Earth's core, and the planet would never be the same. Time would tell whether humanity could rebuild after such a cataclysmic event. In the command center, General Celine breathed a sigh of relief. Her hands shook as she wiped her brow. They had done it. The Empire's reign had ended, and Earth had proven it would never bow to tyranny again. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty room, her voice filled with exhaustion. "We made it." Dr. Winters stood beside her, a solemn look on her face. "Earth is free. But we've lost so much. We must rebuild, but we will never forget the price we paid." As Celine gazed out at the blue planet on the screen before her, she knew that Earth had crossed a line that would forever change its future. Humanity had fought for its survival, and it had won. But the scars would remain for generations. Earth had defeated the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. But the journey ahead was just beginning.